Hey everyone, my name is Sara Harberson. I'm America's college counselor. It's good to be back here again with another Facebook Live for June. I know a lot of students just finished the school year and you've got questions about summer, about test scores, about college lists, about everything under the sun when it comes to college admissions. So that's what I'm here for. I'm looking forward to seeing what questions you have. But in the meantime, I always love hearing from all of you. If you are a parent or a student, let me know what state you're coming from. Also really great to see. You know, in Application Nation, we have almost every single state represented, and a lot of them started by watching my Facebook Lives. We've always saved every single Facebook Live I've ever done. I don't know how long I've been doing this, for many, many years. You can always check out my Facebook pages for Sara Harberson and Admissions Revolution, and we also keep them on my website as well, so check them out. But you know, this is a great time of year to kind of look at how the school year went and then figure out what your plan is in terms of summer plans, classes for next year, teacher recommendations, especially for those high school seniors. College visits are a big thing in the summertime. I just finished a Zoom call with our younger Application Nation group talking about tips on what to be planning for college visits and how to determine what colleges to visit. So that could be on your mind, but I'm looking forward to seeing what is on all of your minds. And I see we have first question coming in from Marjorie. Hi, Marjorie from Hawaii. What's the latest? We should have the college list and essays ready to go. All right, so in terms of the college list, I often say, you know, if you have, Marjorie, you've got a rising high school senior, I believe. So if you have a rising high school senior in your household, you're probably right now in that intermediate stage where your list is coming together, but it's probably a little bit longer than it needs to be. I think a great final college list should be between 9 and 12 colleges long, and your final list usually starts to happen the end of the summer or the fall of senior year. So I would say your intermediate college list should be in place because you definitely want to try to visit as many schools on the list as you can at this point. In terms of essays, this is my timeline. I like my students to pick their essay topic for the main essay in June, right after junior year ends. And I like them to have their main essay that's going to be sent to almost all the colleges on their list. I want that essay to be done ideally by the end of June or the end of July, because the rest of the summer, August especially, we're going to be filling out applications, or you should be filling out applications, Common App, and most applications update their application in the summer, and they have that update available to rising high school seniors starting August 1st. So that's when you can start filling out a lot of applications. It's possible to fill out applications before the August 1st update. Common App promises that the information that you provide will roll over with the update, but I would say most high school students are ready to fill that application out in August, and that is also the time when they can begin to start writing supplemental essays as well. If you or your child is going to be applying to more selective colleges, those supplemental essays are going to start to add up. They're a lot of work. They're usually harder to write than the main college essay, so having as much time to work on them before the school year begins is always helpful. The challenge is that most colleges are not going to announce their supplemental essay prompts until August 1st. But once in a while, a college will let us know. So if you follow the University of Virginia, Dean Jay's blog, they just announced their prompts for this coming admission cycle, and the essays are going to be a little bit shorter, and there are a few more options in there for students to choose from. So if you're lucky and you're applying to UVA or a couple of other colleges, they have announced their supplemental essay prompts. If not, a lot of times we have to wait until August. So that ends up being a big part of the fall. A lot of students can't finish their supplemental essays right in the summertime. So they start senior year, they're finishing up applications, finishing up usually supplemental essays as well. But ideally, I'd want everything done by, you know, especially for those early decision or early action schools, ideally by mid-October, because a lot of deadlines will be November 1st, a few will be October 15th. But if you're a member of Application Nation, you know that I always recommend a rolling admissions school, and you can usually start to apply to rolling admissions programs around the beginning of August, so you can get that out of the way even before senior year begins. And rolling admissions programs usually don't require a whole lot: self-reported grades in classes, self-reported test scores, usually no letters of recommendation, sometimes not even any essays are required. So it's a good way to kind of get your feet wet and begin to apply to college. All right, next question. Good evening, Sarah. My son is applying to a popular competitive public university. He wants to know if his chances are better at being admitted if he applies undecided or as a business major. He's taken many business classes in high school and is a sports team manager. Well, that's good, because I often say that when students are picking a major, I want them to have evidence to back it up. And of course, you can show evidence to back up your academic interest, your major choice, just by the classes you take and the grades that you get in those classes, but also your extracurricular activities. So it sounds like your son is really thinking about building up that evidence, and that's really great. Keep in mind two things for business and undecided. For business, it is probably the most competitive, popular major choice right now for high school seniors who are applying to college. And so that means it's going to be pretty selective to get into business programs. So you might see an overall acceptance rate for a college or university, but you almost have to figure in or factor in that the business program is probably going to have a lower acceptance rate than the overall acceptance rate for that college or university. So you have to make sure that you are seriously competitive for that business program. I would just say that because business is so popular, I really encourage those students to have not only a clear sense of what field within business they're interested in, but be able to articulate that interest in any supplemental essays, or be able to show a more specific interest in business on their extracurricular activities list. Undecided, is it something that's going to help you or hurt you? I would say that at the more selective colleges, applying as an undecided major can definitely make it a little bit more challenging. Most of those highly selected colleges are going to have supplemental essay prompts about what the student is interested in, and if they're undecided, that essay tends to not be as strong. So I'm a big believer in picking a major that makes sense for the student right now. But be careful with business, highly competitive. Be careful with listing undecided, especially if you're applying to more selective colleges, because admissions officers really do like to visualize what that student is going to be doing from an academic standpoint if they were to be admitted and enroll. Next question, wondering your thoughts on dual enrollment classes and how competitive colleges view these in comparison to pre-AP and AP classes. So dual enrollment classes are more common at public high schools, and a dual enrollment class allows the student typically to take a college level class and get credit to graduate from high school, and also to go towards their undergraduate college degree as well. So let's say you go to a public high school and you're taking a dual enrollment class through a local university. The class might be taught at your high school, it might be taught at the local university, but you're getting dual enrollment or dual credit to graduate from high school and possibly work towards your degree. But if you're applying to the more selective colleges or colleges out of state, taking those honors and AP classes, really AP classes are usually the most challenging classes offered at the high school, unless there's an IB program. Taking the AP classes is what I would recommend if you are planning to apply to the more selective colleges and planning to apply to colleges outside of your state, because those dual enrollment classes or dual credit classes that are offered at your high school in your state are probably not going to transfer to another institution outside of your state, but especially to a highly selective college. So if you have a choice and you're a junior or senior and you can take a dual enrollment class or an AP class, I would always prefer the AP class as long as you think you can handle it. Next question, Sarah, my son is most likely going to be a biology major. he took the biology SAT after his freshman year and got a 750 on it. Should he submit that? Oh my gosh, Lisa, that's amazing. So a couple of things. Lisa's referring to what used to be called the College Board subject tests. And there used to be about 20 different subject tests. They were eliminated as of, I want to say last year or the year before, right when the pandemic hit. But if a student took a subject test before they got eliminated and they scored really well, like Lisa's son, absolutely, you want to report that. And at this point, most colleges are asking students to self-report their test scores right on the application. So in the testing section, you would be able to report SAT, ACT scores, IB scores, AP scores, or even the subject tests until the high school students that were probably in middle school when those were eliminated, where they probably never had that opportunity to even take it. But those high school freshmen, it's possible for them to have taken it. And that's another way to show evidence, right? You know, for that student who wants to major in biology, maybe they take AP biology by their senior year, or they get an A in honors biology, or they get a 750 on the subject test in biology. Those are great ways to show evidence of your ability and your passion for the subject matter that you want to major in. Next question. My daughter is in grade 11. She may get a B in her physics class. She's been straight A's so far with an average of 97%. Will this B change her from a reach student to a target student? She intends to major in history. Have you seen a student retaking a course because of a lower grade? Okay, there are a lot of questions there. Maybe I can just tackle one by one. Here's the thing. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing reach, target, and likely. Those are terms and classifications that we often use to describe colleges, but if you've read my book SOUNDBITE or are part of Application Nation, you know that I also classify students that way. So this parent's daughter is a reach student. Those are the highest achieving students applying to college. And you know what? Getting a B is okay. You can still be competitive for even the highly selective colleges, especially because the B is in physics and she's planning to major in history. So she will still be a reach student. She can still be competitive to highly selective colleges based on her objective criteria. And I would absolutely not retake a class that a student gets a B in. It's a very good grade. So she should be fine. All right. Next question. What is your impression of the IB program for college admissions or college applications? Well, the IB program stands for International Baccalaureate, and the program started overseas outside of the United States to allow especially those students to apply to American universities and other universities across the world. The IB program is highly respected. To be able to pull it off and do the full IB diploma program, the student is usually taking about 7 to 8 classes for junior and senior year. So it is highly respected by admissions officers, but it's also really, really challenging. There are going to be some high schools, though, overseas or in the United States that offer both the AP curriculum and the IB curriculum. If you do the full IB program, I would say it's probably respected more than if you did a full AP curriculum, especially if you're taking 5 APs and you're taking 7 IB classes in 11th and 12th grade, but it's pretty darn close. So if a student has the choice, they should pick the program that fits them best. I'm going to be honest, the IB program, because there are so many classes that the student has to take, and usually it's a 2-year sequence, 11th and 12th grade, it really limits their choice and flexibility, especially for science, because you're taking science, the same science for 11th and 12th grade. So I find that a lot of IB students are missing a traditional science class as a result. So that's why some students will choose AP classes, or they'll do a mix of AP and IB classes depending on what their high school has to offer. So I would say the IB program is not as common or popular in the United States, but there are a growing number of public and private high schools here that offer it. I would say the AP program is still going to be a lot more popular here in the States. All right, next question. How much preference is given to those who attend Catholic high schools in Catholic university admissions? So you will find that the Catholic or the Jesuit universities tend to give a little extra advantage or push when a student is coming from a Jesuit or a Catholic high school, and if the student is self-identifying in their application that they are Catholic as well. And that, these colleges can do what they want. Most of them are practicing holistic admissions. And so if they want to be a little bit more generous to the Jesuit or Catholic high schools, they can be. So yes, I generally see that the acceptance rates for students who go to those Jesuit or Catholic high schools applying to those Jesuit or Catholic colleges tend to have a higher likelihood of being admitted. Not a huge gap, but definitely an increase in the likelihood of admission. Hi, Shannon. Good to see you here. My daughter is interning right now. Do any colleges value a recommendation from a supervisor? She's interning with the Department of Defense. That's amazing, Shannon. Oh, my word. Okay, so generally speaking, I really want students, if they can, to rely on their academic core teachers at their high school for letters of recommendation, ideally those junior year teachers. But you know what? Not everybody has a close relationship with their core teachers. So sometimes they're asking an elective teacher. Sometimes they're asking a teacher from 10th grade. And sometimes they want to ask someone that they work for, or a mentor, or someone in their community. I would say that most of the highly selected colleges will probably not focus too much on an extra letter of recommendation coming from the outside, but someone like the Department of, the Secretary of Defense, or within your state, that would be a pretty big deal to get a letter from that individual, especially if the individual can talk personally about the student. So not many students have that opportunity, but if your daughter has it, I would definitely see if that person is willing to write for her, because I think the title of that person's job will definitely get attention. And if, again, it's personalized and that person knows your daughter really well, hopefully it'll come through in the letter of recommendation. And I'll also mention that, things change in the college admissions process. It's just really slow. I think about the fact that the first college in the country, Bowdoin College, went test optional. I think it was even before 1970, and it took decades for us to get to this point where the majority of colleges are test optional. Things move very slowly. Change happens very slowly in college admissions, but we are seeing some positive changes that are very student friendly. So my old employer and my alma mater, at least for graduate school, the University of Pennsylvania, just got a new dean of admissions last year. The first female dean of admissions ever at Penn. And she announced last year that because of the pandemic and because students may not have an opportunity to get close with teachers and build those relationships in the pandemic, she made an announcement that one of the letters of recommendation didn't have to come from an academic core teacher at the high school. So be on the lookout for more colleges that hopefully adopt a similar policy. Next question. If colleges aren't accepting the AP credits, should my child still take the AP exam? So it's going to vary from college to college, but I would encourage students who are thinking about taking AP classes and AP exams to look at the college's website and look at their AP credit policy, because you're right, a lot of colleges are getting tougher and tougher and they're not giving a whole lot of credit, even when a student gets 5s or 4s on those AP exams. So it's something to look into really before you even sign up for AP classes, but especially before you agree to take these AP exams. I think most admissions officers still want to see AP scores if the student took the AP class. That being said, it is truly up to the student to self-report those AP scores. So I'm a big believer in making sure that you only report AP scores that are going to strengthen your application, not weaken your application. Even though they're not required for admission, if you report them, they do become a part of the student's application. But especially for those high school seniors or those students who are going to be seniors this coming year. You have to remember your AP scores from senior year are not going to have any impact on admissions, but in a case where a college does give you a lot of AP credit for 4s and 5s especially, it's probably still worth it to take those AP exams, but you have to do what's right for you. All right, next question. Hi, Sarah. I'm an AP 2023 parent and was wondering on your thoughts in regards to reaching out to admissions officers as part of demonstrated interest. Is it acceptable? Should the student reach out to them and or a professor who teaches in the university in the field the student is interested in? Okay. So DI is demonstrated interest, by the way. I just did a Zoom call for our younger Application Nation group, and I said demonstrated interest is a topic we talk a lot about, and I usually abbreviate it, DI. So I would say that for a college that cares about demonstrated interest and for an admissions office where the admissions officers are really amenable to meeting students, sure, you could definitely connect with them when you visit or reaching out by email, but you will notice, or you may not notice, but it's happening behind the scenes. And I know because I was behind the scenes for a big chunk of my career. Oftentimes, especially at a bigger university or a more selective college or university, the admissions officers really don't want to get involved with the prospective student because it's highly competitive or they have a lot of students to deal with, so they don't necessarily want to meet with students or even go back and forth over email. So keep that in mind. But for colleges that are smaller or colleges that have higher acceptance rates, those admissions officers might keep track of who they connect with in the admissions process. In terms of professors, though, a couple of things, and I mentioned this in the Zoom call with the Application Nation families tonight. High school students oftentimes are going to feel very intimidated by speaking to a professor as a high school student. So I don't typically recommend that you set up meetings with professors because, number one, the student is probably not ready to have that conversation. And the second reason I wouldn't recommend it is it's incredibly rare for a college professor to meet a student and then follow up with the admissions office and let them know, hey, I had this great conversation with a high school junior or senior. So it's not really going to help you in the admissions process. It's not really going to have any impact on demonstrated interest or getting into that college as well. AP scores. How important is it to send AP scores? You did well on 3 AP scores, but not well on 1. Yes, I understand. What will a selective school think about you not sending one, or should you not send them at all? This is a question that I get asked probably on a daily basis, and especially once the AP scores come out in the next couple of weeks, I believe I probably will get about a dozen questions a day for the next 3 months, especially as students fill out applications. I am incredibly cautious about reporting AP scores. First of all, almost every college is not going to expect official AP scores from the College Board. There are a few exceptions. Georgetown, not surprisingly, they have their own rules in the admissions process, and they want students to report all of their AP scores, and they want them to be official. But that's pretty unusual. I would say 99% of the colleges in this country will take self-reported AP scores right on the student's application, at least for the admissions process. If you're trying to get credit, once you go, then you would probably need to send an official score report after you decide to enroll at an institution. So self-reported scores are the common theme here. And so when you self-report AP scores on an application, you can pick and choose which scores you report. And remember what I just said, you only want to report scores that will strengthen your application. I can remember being at Penn. It's a highly selective university. I can remember being a part of admissions committee where the students self-reported 5s and 4s, and just getting a 4 on an AP exam, especially if it matched up with the student's major, was enough of a reason for Penn to deny a student. So you want to be careful with reporting these scores. Will the admissions officer know, will they be able to tell, the student took 3 APs junior year, but is only reporting 1 AP score, will they just jump to conclusions and assume you got a low score? It doesn't really matter. They can't hold that against you unless you actually report a lower score. So what I do with especially our Application Nation students is when they get their AP scores back, I look at their scores, I look at their major choice, and I look at the colleges on their list, and I tell them exactly what scores to report for each college they're applying to, because it's going to vary from school to school. So that's really what you want to do. The more selective colleges, be careful. Less selective colleges, if you get 3s and 4s, it's probably absolutely okay. And we have this phenomenal UC expert in our Application Nation groups, and she always tells us that if you're applying to the University of California system, getting 3s and 4s and 5s is absolutely fine. Whereas if you're applying to a private, non-UC, highly selected college, I would say definitely don't send any 3s, possibly consider holding back some of those 4s as well. So you can decide whether or not you're going to report all of your AP scores, none of your AP scores, or some of them. My son is a rising 8th grader. Is it too early to enroll him in your program? Oh, great question. Oh, so he would be the class of 2027. So he's got to wait until he finishes 8th grade, and that's when we would welcome you and your family and your son to the group. So we just opened up the Younger Application Nation group for the class of 2026, for example. Those are those students that are entering 9th grade in the fall. So he's got a year to go. The good news though, I do Facebook Lives every single month. I don't think I'm doing one for July just because I think a lot of people are on vacation. I usually do 1 or 2 Instagram Lives every single month. I do a blog almost every single week. I got a lot of free resources, so you can get a lot of great information even before he starts freshman year. Next question. What should my daughter do to prepare for college as an incoming freshman in high school? So I want her to pick her classes for freshman year very thoughtfully. Because a lot of times what you take freshman year will dictate what you take even through senior year, especially when we're talking about a math sequence. You know, if a student is taking geometry their freshman year of high school, that means that potentially they could get to calculus by senior year. And taking calculus is a really important math class, especially if you're looking at the more selective colleges out there. So picking your classes carefully, making sure that you have, or she has 5 core subjects freshman year. The only exception would be there are a handful of high schools across the country that don't offer a social studies or a history class for freshman year, but that's usually very clear on the high school profile, so admissions officers would know that. But usually she's going to be taking 5 core classes from freshman year on. She should try to challenge herself as much as she can, but not to the point where she's going to be absolutely overwhelmed, because she wants to have time to explore extracurricular activities or sports or the arts. And that's always important in 9th grade. 9th grade is a year to kind of test out a few different things that she might be interested in. But ideally, sophomore, junior, senior year, ideally it would be wonderful if the student is able to stick with the activities that mean the most to them. In terms of teachers, you know, I always tell students to start getting some practice talking to their teachers outside of the class period. She would not be asking a freshman year teacher for a letter of recommendation. Usually it's junior year, sometimes 10th grade or senior year teachers can also write letters of recommendation, but it's really good practice because it can be intimidating at first to talk to your high school teacher. But I always tell students that if they have a curiosity about the field that the teacher teaches, if they want to bounce ideas off of them, if they want to do more additional research, if they are interested in a program, they can get some feedback from the teacher. So it's a good way to practice talking to those teachers outside of class. Next question, do colleges look at students coming from public and private high schools differently? Is it better to go to a public with many AP classes versus smaller private high school with fewer AP classes? Okay. This is a phenomenal question. So it really doesn't matter how many AP classes a high school offers. Colleges only expect a student to take advantage of what's being offered at their particular high school. So they don't base admissions on how many APs a particular high school will make available to their students. It's really going to come down to what the student has taken advantage of at that high school. I worked as a director of college counseling at a high school that eliminated the AP program completely. The students getting in college, their results were not hurt or disadvantaged in any way. And that's the great thing about college admissions. You want to look at your high school profile. That's something that should be updated every single year by the college counseling office or the guidance department. And it's supposed to go with every student's official transcript when it gets sent to the colleges. And that should have the curriculum and a lot of times even what classes are available so that an admissions officer can tell if the student is taking advantage of the most challenging courses that are available to them. But public versus private, here's the thing. 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, yeah, it really made a difference if you went to a private school over a public school. Especially the selective colleges were definitely giving a lot of advantages to students who went to private high schools, private day schools, boarding schools, absolutely. But now, they can't get away with that. It's just not fair to give advantages to students because they go to a certain high school. So you will find that colleges across the country are doing a much better job of making sure that there is a level playing field so that students are not judged based on the high school they come from, but are based, again, on what they took advantage of at their particular high school. Do private high schools still have better luck or have a higher acceptance rate into certain colleges? Yeah, absolutely. It depends on the relationship that the high school has with the college, I guess. But that kind of practice is becoming a lot more unusual because colleges do not want to be viewed as giving one group more advantages in the admissions process than another, especially when it comes down to the high school. Next question, my daughter will be starting 9th grade in the fall. Does going to a completely virtual high school, I didn't catch that. Does going to a completely virtual high school have an impact on college admissions? Another really good question. So when I first got into college admissions, it was in the late 1990s, and there weren't virtual high schools, but there was a small percentage of students that were considered homeschooled applicants. And it was a really tough time to apply as a homeschooled applicant because there weren't a lot of resources, there weren't classes that they could take besides the ones that usually their family was teaching the student. So it tended to not bode well for the student who was homeschooled. But over the past 20 to 25 years that I've been in the field, homeschooled applicants tend to have a lot more success in the admissions process because they get to take community college classes or local universities. Sometimes they're even able to take some high school classes at a local, bricks and mortar high school. So things are really expanded for those homeschooled applicants, and there's a lot more of them. But you were asking about virtual high schools. I would say that if you asked me that question 20 years ago, I would say, yeah, there's a little bit of a stigma. But at this point, even before the pandemic hit, virtual high schools were getting a lot more common, and colleges were seeing, and I was seeing personally, stronger applicants coming from those virtual high schools. Now, since the pandemic hit, it's a lot more common for a student to do a full virtual high school experience for a variety of reasons. Maybe for health reasons, maybe they are an elite athlete, maybe they are a Broadway star. So there are a lot of reasons why students could do virtual high school. So I don't believe it's going to carry the stigma that it once did. Does it mean that you have to do a little bit more heavy lifting in terms of getting yourself involved in your community and organizations? Yeah, probably. With a virtual high school, having Zoom meetings for club meetings is not always fun. So definitely make sure that your extracurricular activities list is strong, and make sure that even though it's a virtual learning environment, the student is making connections with their teachers because they're still going to need to ask them for letters of recommendation. All right, we'll try to get in one more question here. One of the teachers my daughter has asked to write a recommendation letter. Good timing there. She had him for 2 classes, just announced he's moving to another school. Is it okay to use him in this situation? It is. Okay, but I've got some tips for you, Tom, and your daughter. All right? So it happens all the time. Teachers retire or they get a job in another school district or another school. The key thing is, if they say yes to the student that they are willing to write a letter of recommendation, make sure your daughter connects with that teacher and has their contact information, because they probably are not going to have that school email once they leave the school or once the school year ends. So having contact information for that teacher is really important. So if your daughter needs to communicate with that teacher who left, she's able to do that. So possibly have a phone number for that teacher, or at a minimum, a working email that they check on a daily basis. The last thing that I'll mention here is it's always good to check in with the school counselor at your daughter's high school and find out how letters of recommendation are submitted to colleges. It's going to vary from high school to high school. When I worked at a high school, I gathered all the letters of recommendation from all the teachers who were writing for the students, and I was the one who submitted those letters of recommendation with my letter of recommendation as the counselor and the transcript and the school profile. But at a lot of the other high schools, the teachers submit the letters on their own. So I would just check in with the school counselor and find out how letters are submitted at your daughter's high school and make sure she has the contact information for that teacher who's leaving. But if the teacher agreed, that teacher usually will honor that commitment and write the letter of recommendation, whether they're coming back for the school year or not. On that note, I think we got to wrap up. I hope that this has been helpful to you, and I look forward to seeing you back here again for another Facebook Live. Again, I don't think we're doing it for July, so I'll see you in August. Have a great summer. Bye-bye.